Good afternoon. Tonight we are going to be reading through chapter 18 of Dracula by Bram Stoker. But we're not just going to be reading the words, we're going to be stopping and talking about interesting vocabulary words or interesting phrases as we encounter them. So if you're learning English and you're pretty advanced, this is a wonderful way to improve your vocabulary or to improve your understanding of things that you think you already know. And also, we're doing this live, so if you're watching this with me right now, live, you can ask questions in the chat. What does this mean? What does that mean? Explain this, explain that. That's the whole point of doing this video, so I definitely want you to ask questions as we go. Now, what we've been doing when we finished the chapter recently is I've been bringing in a couple of people into the video to practice pronunciation and accentuation and intonation. And we do that for about an hour after we finish the chapter. So that's a lot of work, actually, a lot of good work in pronunciation. If you want to improve your accent, I really recommend that you stay for the extra session at the end. And I bring these people in from Discord. I have two regular people, and I find that two is enough. We can't do more. But I would like more people to join the Discord server. There's a link in the description, and that way I would like to start some other videos where anybody can join. But I need more people to join first. Because otherwise it won't work out. So if you're interested in improving your accent and working with me live in a video, then please go into the description and click on the Discord link and join my server. All right. Well, let's get started with Chapter 18. Dr. Seward's Diary, 30th of September. I got home at 5 o'clock and found that Godalming and Morris had not only arrived, but had already studied the transcript of the various diaries and letters which Harker had not yet returned from his visit. To the carrier's men of whom Dr. Hennessy had written to me. Mrs. Harker gave us some tea. And I can honestly say that for the first time since I've lived in it, the old house seemed like home. When we had finished, Mrs. Harker said, Dr. Seward. Sorry, I'm just readjusting something here. Dr. Seward, may I ask you a favor? I want to see your patient, Mr. Renfield. Do let me see him. Do let me see him. What you have said of him in your diary interests me so much. She looked so appealing. Appealing in this case means attractive. She looked very attractive. She looked so appealing, so pretty, that I could not refuse her. And there was no possible reason why I should, so I took her with me. When I went into the room, I told the man that a lady would like to see him, to which he simply answered, Why? She's going through the house and wants to see everyone in it, I answered. Oh, very well. Let her come in by all means, but just wait a minute till I tidy up the place. His method of tidying up was peculiar. He simply swallowed all the flies and spiders in the box before I could stop him. It was quite evident that he feared or was jealous of some interference. When he had got through his disgusting task, I said cheerfully, Let the lady come in, and sat down on the edge of his bed with his head down. But his eyelids were raised so that he could see her as she entered. For a moment I thought that he might have some homicidal intent. I think we've probably talked about this word, uh, homicide, before. Homo means man, and cide, C-I-D-E, that means like murder. So homicide is murdering someone. The idea of murdering a person. Let's see. I just forgot what I said. Did I say? I hope I said that homo means man. Homo means man, and side means murder. I'm sorry, I was typing something and got distracted. I'm making a list of vocabulary words as we go. Okay. So he's worried that Renfield has some ideas of homicide, of murdering people. So he's afraid of letting her in. I remember how quiet he had been just before he attacked me in my own study. And I took care to stand where I could seize him. Seizing means taking by force. Where I could seize him at once if he attempted to make a spring at her. She came into the room with easy gracefulness, which would at once command the respect of any lunatic, for easiness is one of the qualities mad people most respect. She walked over to him, smiling pleasantly, and held out her hand. "Good evening, Mr. Renfield," she said. "You see, I know you, for Dr. Seward has told me of you." He made no immediate reply, but eyed her intently. When you eye someone, you're looking at them maybe kind of suspiciously, like, "What do you want? What do you want from me?" When you eye something, it's because you're waiting for something else to happen. But I think in this case, it probably means that he's suspicious of her and waiting for the thing that she wants to do to him. He made no immediate reply, but eyed her all over intently, with a set frown on his face. This look gave way to one of wonder, which merged in doubt. And then to my intense astonishment, he said, "You're not the girl the doctor wanted to marry, are you? You can't be. You know, for she's dead." Mrs. Harker smiled sweetly as she replied, "Oh, no. I have a husband of my own, to whom I was married before I ever saw Dr. Seward, or he me. I am Mrs. Harker." "Then what are you doing here?" "My husband and I are staying on a visit with Dr. Seward." "Then don't stay." "But why not?" I thought that this style of conversation might not be pleasant to Mrs. Harker, and more than it was to me, so I joined in. "How did you know I wanted to marry anyone?" His reply was contemptuous. Contempt means hate. So when he answered, you could hear the hate in his voice. His reply was simply contemptuous, given in a pause, in which he turned his eyes from Mrs. Harker to me, instantly turning them back again. "What an asinine question!" That's a good word, asinine. That means stupid. Not extremely common, but it's good. It's a pretty strong word. What a stupid question. What an asinine question. "I don't see that at all, Mr. Renfield," said Mr. Harker at once, championing me. He replied to her with as much courtesy and respect as he had shown contempt to me. "You will, of course, understand, Mrs. Harker, that when a man is so loved and honored as our host is, everything regarding him is of interest in our little community. Dr. Seward is loved not only by his household, but by his friends, but even by his patients who, being some of them hardly in mental equilibrium means balance. So not being in mental equilibrium is a very polite way of saying crazy. Not being in mental balance. Are apt to distort causes and effects. Since I myself have been an inmate of a lunatic asylum, I cannot but notice the sophistic tendencies of one of its inmates lean towards the errors of non causa and ignoratio elenche. Oh boy. Let's see. Let's look up some of these words. Let's start with sophistic. Deceptive, specious, fallacious, misleading. How did they use it here? I cannot but notice that the sophistic tendencies of some of its inmates, so some of the people staying in this mental hospital are very deceptive, lean towards the errors of non causa. Okay, that's a Latin phrase, but and it probably just means no cause. Maybe that means for no reason, but let's see. Probably it means for no reason. Not the cause for the cause. Someone assumes a casual relationship between two things without sufficient evidence. Mistaking cause and effect. Well, that makes sense because he was just talking about cause and effect. What was he referring to? Where did he mention cause and effect? Dr. Seward is loved not only by his household and friends, but even by his patients, who, being some of them hardly in mental equilibrium, are apt to distort causes and effects. So he's saying that some of the patients in the mental hospital maybe do not make the connection between cause and effect, or make the wrong connections, which is what non causa means. It means confusing correlation with causation. So confusing that two things happen together and one thing being the cause of it. Sircon says asinine comes from ass, which means horse, donkey, kind of animal. Quite interesting. Well, the word ass can be used to mean stupid person. I think the difference, it's actually very common to call someone an ass. But I think the difference is that although asinine is a very rude thing, and it's the equivalent of calling someone stupid, it's not considered a bad word. So it's a very strong word, but it isn't like, the F word or the S word or something that you're not allowed to say. You can say it, it just isn't very nice. An ass, on the other hand, although that's not a very strong swear word, I think that would be considered bad. I gotta wake up my dog. He's having a nightmare. Okay. So we said non causa and ignoratio elenche. Let's see what or elenche. More Latin. Ignoratio elenche. Let's see what that means. Ignorance of the issue or irrelevant conclusion. So I don't know what Renfield is talking about, but he seems to be implying that some people are drawing the wrong conclusions about what's happening. That seems to be what all these phrases are pointing to. Let's read that paragraph again. Maybe it will make more sense. He replied to her with as much courtesy and respect as he had shown contempt to me. You will, of course, understand, Mrs. Harker, that when a man is so loved and honored as our host is, everything regarding him is of interest in our little community. Dr. Seward is loved not only by his household and his friends, but even by his patients, who, being some of them hardly in mental equilibrium, crazy, are apt to distort causes and effects. So because they're not mentally healthy, sometimes they draw the wrong conclusions, it seems. Since I myself have been an inmate of the lunatic asylum, I cannot but notice that the sophistic tendencies of some of its inmates lean towards the errors of non causa, so making wrong connections between cause and effect, and ignoratio elenchi, which, what does that mean again? Missing the point. I positively opened my eyes at this new development. Here was my own pet lunatic, the most pronounced of his type that I had ever met, talking elemental philosophy, and with the manner of a polished gentleman. I wonder if it was Mrs. Harker's presence which had touched some chord in his memory. If this new phase was spontaneous or in any way due to her unconscious influence, she must have a rare gift or power. We continued to talk for some time, and seeing that he was seemingly quite reasonable, she ventured, looking at me questioningly, as she began, to lead him to his favorite topic. I was again astonished. Astonished means very surprised. For he addressed himself to the question with the impartiality of the completest sanity. To be impartial means to sort of be in the middle, not favor one side or another side. To be objective. He even took himself as an example when he mentioned certain things. Why, I myself am an instance of a man who had a strange belief indeed. It was no wonder that my friends were alarmed and insisted on my being put under control. I used to fancy that life was a positive and perpetual entity, and that by consuming a multitude of live things, no matter how low in the scale of creation, one might indefinitely prolong life. So he's saying that he got this idea in his head that life could continue forever as long as you consume things that are alive. And it doesn't matter how big or small they are. So you could eat a handful of live cockroaches and that will give you more life. At times I held the belief so strongly that I actually tried to take a human life. The doctor here will bear me out that on one occasion I tried to kill him for the purpose of strengthening my vital powers. That word vital, vita, that's a Latin word for life. So if something is vital, that means it's important to life. By the assimilation with my own body of his life through the medium of his blood, relying, of course, upon the scriptural phrase, for the blood is the life. When you see the word scripture, scripture just means writing. But just like Bible only means book in Latin, scripture just meaning writing, that means writings from the Bible. So when he says scriptural phrase, that means a phrase from the Bible. For the blood is the life, though indeed the vendor of a certain nostrum has vulgarized the truism to the very point of contempt. Isn't that true, Doctor? I nodded in assent. Assent means agree, so I nodded my head and I agreed. For I was so amazed that I hardly knew what to either think or say. It was hard to imagine that I had seen him eat up his spiders and flies not 5 minutes before. Looking at my watch, I saw that I should go to the station to meet Van Helsing, so I told Mrs. Harker that it was time to leave. She came at once, after saying pleasantly to Mr. Renfield, "Goodbye, and I hope I may see you often under auspices pleasanter to yourself." To which, to my astonishment, he replied, "Goodbye, my dear. I pray God I may never see your sweet face again. May he bless and keep you." Sir Count says Dr. Seward shifts from a scientific mindset to a more philosophical or spiritual one. Well, I don't know if it was Dr. Seward. It seems like he was shocked that suddenly Renfield had become philosophical and given a philosophical reason for eating his bugs and also presenting some kind of insight, which I don't think he's done before, as to how or why he was in the lunatic asylum. And maybe that put the doctor also in a more philosophical or spiritual mood. The big surprise. When I went to the station to meet Van Helsing, I left the boys behind me. Poor Art seemed more cheerful than he has been since Lucy first took ill, and Quincy is more like his own bright self than he has been for many a long day. Van Helsing stepped from the carriage with the eager nimbleness of a boy. To be nimble, let's define that word. There's a nursery rhyme. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jump over the candlestick. But nimble, I think it just means that you're very flexible. Well, let's see. Quick, light, agile in movement, thought, or action. So it could be flexible, because you've got agile, lively, flexible, swift. Quick and flexible is kind of what it means. Van Helsing stepped from the carriage with the eager nimbleness of a boy. He saw me at once and rushed up to me, saying, "Ah, friend John, how goes all? Well? So, I have been busy, for I come here to stay if need be. All affairs are settled with me, and I have much to tell. Madam Mina is with you?" "Yes." "And her so fine husband? And Arthur and my friend Quincy, they are with you too?" "Good." As I drove to the house, I told him of what had passed, and how my own diary had come to be of some use through Mrs. Harker's suggestion, at which the professor interrupted me. "Ah, that wonderful Madam Mina! She has man's brain, a brain that a man should have were he much gifted, and a woman's heart. The good God fashioned her for a purpose. Believe me, when he made that so good combination, friend John, up to now, fortune has made that woman of help to us. After tonight, she must not have to do with this so terrible affair. It is not good that she run a risk so great. We men are determined, nay, are we not pledged to destroy this monster? But it is no part for a woman, even if she be not harmed. Her heart may fail her in so much and so many horrors, and hereafter she may suffer, both in waking from her nerves and in sleep." from her dreams. And besides, she is a young woman, and not so long married. There may be other things to think of some time, if not now. You tell me she has wrote all. Then she must consult with us, but tomorrow she say goodbye to this work, and we go alone. I agreed heartily with him, and when I told him what we had found in his absence, that the house which Dracula had bought was the very next one to my own, he was amazed, and a great concern seemed to come on him. "Oh, that we had known that before," he said, "for then we might have reached him in time to save poor Lucy. However, the milk that is spilt cries not out afterwards." There is an expression in English which is to cry over spilled milk. And that means to, after something bad has happened, to feel bad about it. It doesn't clean up the mess. So if somebody is, imagine you have a car accident. Okay, so you ruin your car. I hope you don't have a car accident, but imagine that you have a car accident for a moment, and you ruin completely your car, and then you're sitting at home saying, "Oh, my poor car." Maybe one of your friends will say, "Don't cry over spilled milk." That means the bad thing already happened. There's nothing you can do about it, so stop crying about it. That's a very common phrase. Here the doctor, I don't know if he's doing this on purpose or he's making a mistake, but he's referring to that. He's saying, "Oh, I wish I had known that Count Dracula was living right next door to you. Maybe we could have saved Lucy." And now he's saying, "Oh, but that's crying over spilled milk," meaning there's nothing we can do about it now. But he says it in a very weird way. How did he say it? Let's read it again. "Oh, that we had known it before," he said, "for then we might have reached him in time to save poor Lucy. However, the milk that is spilled cries not out afterwards, as you say." So I think he's completely destroying that expression. He should be saying, "It's no use to cry over spilled milk. Don't cry over spilled milk." But he says, "The milk that is spilt cries not out afterwards." We shall not think of that, but go on our way to the end. And then he fell into silence that lasted till we entered my own gateway. Before we went to prepare for dinner, he said to Mrs. Harker, "I'm told, Madam Mina, by my friend John, that you and your husband have put up in exact order all things that have been up to this moment." "Not up to this moment, Professor," she said impulsively, "but up to this morning." "But why not up to now?" "We have seen hitherto how good light all the little things have made. We have told our secrets, and yet no one who has told is the worse for it." Mrs. Harker began to blush, and taking the paper from her pockets, she said, "Dr. Van Helsing, will you read this and tell me if it must go in? It is my record of today. I, too, have seen the need of putting down at present everything, however trivial. But there's little in this except what is personal. Must it go in?" Now that word trivial, that's a pretty common word, which means unimportant, insignificant, nothing special. Let's read the phrase again. "I, too, have seen the need of putting down at present." Putting down means writing, recording. Everything, however trivial. So no matter how small, how insignificant, how unimportant, I feel that I should write everything, record everything. The professor read it over gravely, and we've talked about that word grave many times. That means serious. And handing it back, saying, "I need not go in. if you do not wish it, but I pray that it need not go in if you do not wish it, but I pray that it may. It can but make your husband love you more, and all us, your friends, more honor you, as well as more esteem and love. She took it back with another blush and a bright smile. And so now, up to this very hour, all the records we have are complete and in order. The professor took away one copy to study after dinner, and before our meeting, which is fixed for 9 o'clock. The rest of us have already read everything, so when we meet in the study, we shall all be informed as to facts, and can arrange our plan of battle with this terrible and mysterious enemy. Mina Harker's Journal, 30th of September. When we met in Dr. Seward's study 2 hours after dinner, which had been at 6 o'clock, we unconsciously formed a sort of board or committee. Professor Van Helsing took the head of the table, to which Dr. Seward motioned him as he came into the room. So when Van Helsing entered the room, and I guess they're still at the mental hospital, which belongs to Dr. Seward. So really, Dr. Seward is in charge of that building and everything that happens there. But when Van Helsing came in, Dr. Seward motioned for him to sit at the front of the table. So he gave Dr. Van Helsing, or Professor Van Helsing, the honor of sitting at the head of the table as if he's in charge. Jonathan sat next. He made me sit next to him on his right, and he asked me to act as a secretary. Jonathan sat next to me. Opposite us was Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward and Mr. Morris, Lord Godalming being next the professor, and Dr. Seward in the center. The professor said, "I may suppose take it that we are all acquainted with the facts that are in these papers. We all expressed assent." We just saw that word assent. That means we all agreed. And he went on. "Then it were, I think, good that I tell you something of the kind of enemy with which we have to deal. I shall then make it known to you something of the history of this man, which has been ascertained for me. Ascertained means obtained, gotten, received. Somebody found this information for him. So we then can discuss how we shall act, and can take our measure according." Serkan says, intentionally, Stoker made characters speak naturally in their accent according to their personality. He is a great author, I guess. What do you think about his style comparing to Dickens? Well, the thing is, when you start reading books from 19th century England, there are a lot of they have a habit of putting in a lot of very strange local accents and vocabulary, and sometimes it can be very difficult to understand. But I guess it's an art form. There are such beings as vampires. Some of us have evidence that they exist. Even had we not the proof of our own unhappy experience, the teachers and the records of the past give proof enough for sane peoples. I admit that at first I was a skeptic. Were it not that through long years I have trained myself to keep an open mind, I could not have believed until such a time as that fact thunder on my ear. See, I prove, alas! Alas, had I known at first what now I know, nay, had I even guessed at him, one so precious life had been spared too many of us who did love her. But that is gone, and we must so work that other poor souls perish not. Perish means die, so that other people do not die. Whilst we can save, the Nosferatu do not die like us. I know that the word Nosferatu is synonymous with vampire, but I noticed in the beginning of the book that they use that word, and they mentioned that this is what they call it in Transylvania. So I'm just wondering what the language is or where it comes from. I'm just asking ChatGPT. The meaning of Nosferatu is vampire or undead creature. It says possible etymology, so they don't really know. But it could be from Romanian. Some scholars suggest that it comes from the Romanian word nesuferet, meaning insufferable, or plague carrier, which could have been adapted. Slavic influences. Other theories tie it to Slavic terms related to the undead or demonic. Okay, so people don't really know. Probably from Romanian. The Nosferatu do not die like the bee when he sting once. He is only stronger, and being stronger, have yet more power to work evil. This vampire, which is amongst us, is of himself so strong in person as 20 men. He is of cunning, more than mortal, for his cunning be the growth of ages. He have still the aids of necromancy. Necromancy means, necro is a word that means dead. I'm not sure if that's Greek or Latin, necro. Let's see. Pachu's here. Hello, Pachu. Good morning. Necro. I think necro is Greek, but let's see. It's coming up. Yes, it's Greek. Necro means dead, is a Greek word for dead, and manteia means divination or prophecy. So necromancy is communicating with the dead. For his cunning be the growth of ages. He have still the aids of necromancy. So that means he can communicate with spirits, which is, as his etymology imply, the divination by the dead. Divination means like predicting the future, or I think it's mostly predicting the future. And all the dead that he can come nigh to are for him at command. So any dead thing that he encounters is like his slave. He is brute. So we've had that word brute before. That means someone who uses their strength or their force to make things happen. Pachi wrote down the word divination. Do you know that in Latin, when you use, well, at least in Spanish, when you use the word divination, it's a Latin word, and Spanish comes from Latin. It means to guess. So probably in the other languages like Italian or French, it also means something like to guess. So divination is like guessing the future, you can imagine. And more than brute, he is devil in callous. And the heart of him is not. He can within his range direct the elements, the storm, the fog, the thunder. He can command all the meaner things. Mean means horrible, or it's the opposite of nice. So ugly things, bad things, horrible things. And then he uses, he gives some examples. Well, here, I mean, he gives rat. That's a disgusting animal. But I think maybe what they mean by mean is like primitive, like not like humans who can communicate and wear clothes, but the more animal type of creatures. So I think here the best way to interpret the word mean would be like primitive, animalistic. The rat, the owl, the bat, the moth, the fox, and the wolf. He can grow and become small. He can at times vanish. Vanish means disappear and come unknown. How then are we to begin our strike? Strike is hit, to destroy him. How shall we find his where? And having found it, how can we destroy? My friends, this is much. It is a terrible task that we undertake, and there may be consequences to make the brave shudder. For if we fail in this our fight, he must surely win, and then where end we? Life is nothing's. I heed him not. We've talked about the word heed before, which means pay attention to or listen to. So I think he's saying life is nothing. I don't care about life. I don't pay attention to life. I heed him not. But, so he's saying, I don't care about my life. I'll die killing this vampire. But to fail here is not mere life or death. It is that we become as him. And we henceforward become foul things of the night, like him, without heart or conscience, preying on the bodies and the souls of those we love best. Pachi says meaner, horrible. I wouldn't say horrible, but it's kind of the opposite of nice. Or friendly. Sometimes it's the opposite of friendly. I don't like you. You're mean. That means you're not a very friendly person. You say bad things. To us forever the gates of heaven shut. For who shall open them to us again? We go on for all time abhorred. Abhorred means hated by all. A blot on the face of God's sunshine, an arrow in the side of him who died for man. But we are face to face with duty, and in such case must we shrink. Shrink means become small. So here you have this big duty. You can't shrink. You can't make yourself small in this situation. To shrink away from something means to run away from it because you're scared. For me, I say no, but then I am old, and life with his sunshine, his fair places, his song of birds, his music, and his love lie far behind. You others are young. Some have seen sorrow. But there are fair days yet in store. What say you? Whilst he was speaking, Jonathan had taken my hand. I feared oh so much that the appalling nature, appalling means horrible. Pacha is asking about the word henceforward. That is a formal word that you would only see really in books. You would never ever use that in regular conversation. That means from now on, from this day forward, something like that. Let's see. Henceforward, we become foul things. So from that moment, from the moment that we lose the fight, we become, and into the future, we become horrible things, like Dracula. Whilst he was speaking, Jonathan had taken my hand. I feared, oh so much, that the appalling nature of our danger was overcoming him. Appalling, that does mean horrible. So mean doesn't really mean horrible, but appalling, yes, that means horrible. The appalling nature of our danger was overcoming him when I saw his hand stretch out. But it was life to me to feel its touch, so strong, so self-reliant, so resolute. Resolute is when you make a decision and you don't change your mind. I'm doing it. A brave man's hand can speak for itself. It does not even need a woman's love to hear its music. When the professor had done speaking, my husband looked in my eyes, and I in his, and there was no need for speaking between us. I answer for Mina and myself, he said. Count me in, Professor, and that phrasal verb, count me in, count someone in, means include me. Count me in, include me on your mission, Professor. I'm going to do it with you. Count me in, Professor, said Mr. Quincy Morris, laconically, as usual. So now we've seen that word many times. It's really not a word that you would ever see in real life. But now I think I remember that laconically, maybe we even talked about it this morning, means in very few words. So there's an expression in English, short and sweet. That means you say it with very, very few words, and it's to the point. Everybody understands what you mean. Wait, I just want to make sure. I'm going to look up laconically. Pachi, remember that? I think this morning we were talking about the word laconically. I'm just double checking, but I think that's what it means. Brief and concise, yes. So short and sweet. Laconically means short and sweet. But don't try to use that in conversation. Nobody will understand you if you use that word. And then Pachu says, count on or count in. Well, this is where you have to be very careful. Because count on me, and that's an inseparable phrasal verb. You can't say count me on. But count on me means depend on me. Like, I'm a reliable person. But count me in, which is a separable phrasal verb, and you use the preposition in, that means include me. Pachu says laconically, few words, but very clear words, very understandable words. So you say a few words and everybody knows what your idea that you want to express. So that the few words, that's the short part. The sweet part is everybody understands what you mean with just those few words. I am with you, said Lord Godalming, for Lucy's sake, if for no other reason. Dr. Seward simply nodded, so he agreed with his head. The professor stood up after laying his golden crucifix on the table, held out his hand on either side. I took his right hand, Lord Godalming his left. Jonathan held my right with his left and outstretched across to Morris. So we all took hands, and our solemn compact was made. Solemn means serious, and compact is another way of saying an agreement. So our very serious agreement was made. Sirkan says, great authors have an obsession with rhetoric, I guess. Well, that would be a good thing, wouldn't it? Because that's I think, a lot of the ways and how the character comes through is how they speak, which words they use, or how they phrase things. I felt my heart icy cold, but it did not even occur to me to draw back, Remember, draw means pull. And so Lucy was kind of, or Mina, sorry, not Lucy. Mina was feeling very uncomfortable, but she didn't draw back. She didn't pull back her hand. We resumed our places, and Dr. Van Helsing went on with a sort of cheerfulness, which showed that the serious work had begun. It was to be taken as gravely and in as businesslike a way as any other transaction of life. Pachi wrote drawback. So drawback, that's pull back. Draw is pull, and back means the opposite of front. Or the opposite of forward. Well, you know what we have to contend against, but we too are not without strength. We have on our side the power of combination, power denied to the vampire kind. We have sources of science. We are free to act and think. And the hours of the day and the night are ours equally. In fact, so far as our powers extend, they are unfettered. To be unfettered means they're free. They have no obstacles. Nothing to hold them back. We talked about the phrasal verb weigh down. I just made a video about that today. If something weighs you down, you are not unfettered. We are free to use them. We have self-devotion in a cause, and an end to achieve which is not a selfish one. These things are much. Now, let us see how far the general powers arrayed against us are restrict, and how the individual cannot. In fine, let us consider the limitations of the vampire in general, and of this one in particular. Pachi wrote way down, W-A-Y. That's a different way. That means like a road or a path. This is way down like W-E-I-G-H, like weighing or weights. So if something weighs you down, it prevents you from moving forward. So that's the opposite of unfettered. But that's spelled W-E-I-G-H, not W-A-Y. All we have to go upon are traditions and superstitions. These do not at first appear much, when the matter is one of life and death, nay, of more than either life or death. Yet we must be satisfied in the first place because we have to be. No other means is at our control. And secondly, because after all these things, tradition and superstition are everything, does not the belief in vampires rest for others, though not, alas, for us on them? A year ago, which of us would have received such a possibility in the midst of our scientific, skeptical, matter-of-fact 19th century? We even scouted. To scout means to look for something. We even scouted a belief that we saw justified under our very eyes. Take it, then, that the vampire and the belief in his limitations and his cure rest for the moment on the same base. For let me tell you, he is known everywhere that men have been, in old Greece, in old Rome. He flourished in Germany, all over. Flourish means to be healthy, to grow, to become stronger, to become happier. He flourished in Germany all over, in France, in India. Pachu, is there something like a vampire in Nepal or India? Do you have that kind of a story? I was thinking about asking you, and then I thought, oh, I better not. That's kind of silly. But now they mention India, so I'm curious. Even in the, what is this, Chermo says? I don't know what that is. I'm going to ask. ChatGPT doesn't recognize it. Churmo says, I have no idea. Okay, well, I haven't, even ChatGPT doesn't know. Even in the whatever, and in China, so far from us in old ways, there even is he. And the peoples for him at this day, he have followed the wake of the berserker in Iceland, the devil-begotten Hun, the Slav, the Saxon, the Magyar. These are all different groups of people. I'm not sure where Huns are from, but Slavs, that's like people in Russia and Eastern Europe, and Saxons, that would be people like in England, and Magyar is Hungary. I've heard a lot about Huns, but I don't know where they come from. I'm going to ask ChatGPT. Oh, Mohammed's here. Hello, Mohammed. Thanks for joining us. Central Asia. Turkic or Mongolic. Sirkan, do people in Turkey refer to themselves as Huns? Or do you call that to any people in the area? Or is that an old term? I don't know. I'm just asking because I don't know. I've heard of Attila the Hun. So far, then, we have all we may act upon, and let me tell you that very much of the beliefs are justified by what we have seen in our own so unhappy experience. The vampire live on. So here we have another case of using the preposition on, which means continue to live. The vampire continues to live. The vampire lives on. And cannot die by mere passing of the time. He can flourish. Remember, flourish means grow stronger, grow happier, grow healthier. He can flourish when that he can fatten on the blood. I don't know why I'm losing my voice today. He can flourish when that he can fatten on the blood of the living. Even more, we have seen amongst us that he can even grow younger, that his vital faculties grow strenuous, and seem as though they refresh themselves when his special pabulum is plenty. Oh, what's a pabulum? Historically, Hun is considered as Turkic ancestors in our history's education. But so the modern term is probably just Turk, right? Pabulum is a noun with two primary meanings. Literal meaning, food and nourishment. Figurative meaning, bland, insipid, intellectually dull. Okay, I think they have the literal here. Pabulum, food. Fancy word for food. Pachi says, how do you use flourish in a sentence? Well, flourish means grow stronger, grow bigger, grow healthier, grow happier. So, let's see. You can say, oh, when I graduated high school, I was very unhappy in high school, but then when I went to college, I flourished. That means I was really happy. I had a great time. I learned everything. I grew stronger. I grew better. I grew healthier. So anytime you can think of something where something grows and becomes better or stronger or happier, you can use the word flourish. During, if you're for example, if you're talking about India, you could say during the summer when there's no water, everything dies. But then the rainy season, the monsoon comes, and everything flourishes. Everything grows stronger and healthier and happier. But he cannot flourish without this diet. He cannot get bigger and stronger and healthier without his diet of blood. He eat not as others. Even friend Jonathan, who lived with him for weeks, did never see him eat. Never. He throws no shadow. He make in the mirror no reflect. As again Jonathan observe. He has the strength of many of his hand. Pacha says pabulum. That's just a very fancy word for food. Never ever use it to refer to it as food because nobody will know what you're talking about. He has the strength of many of his hand. Witness again, Jonathan, when he shut the door against the wolves, and when he help him from the diligence too. He can transform himself to wolf, as we gather from the ship arrival at Whitby. When to tear open the dog, he can be as a bat, as Madam Mina saw him on the window at Whitby, and as friend John saw him fly from his so near house, and as my friend Quincy saw him at the window of Miss Lucy. He can come in the mist which he creates. That noble ship's captain proved him of this. But, from what we know, the distance he can make in this mist is limited, and it can only be around himself. He come on moonlight rays as elemental dust, as again Jonathan saw those sisters in the castle of Dracula. He became so small. We ourselves saw Miss Lucy, ere she was at peace, slip through a hairbreadth space at the tomb door. He can, once he can find his way, come out from anything or into anything, no matter how close it be bound or even fused up with fire. Solder, you call it. He can see in the dark. No small power this, in a world which is half shut from the light. Ah, but hear me through. He can do all these things, yet he is not free. Nay, he is even more prisoner than the slave of the galley, than the madman in his cell. He cannot go where he lists. He who is not of nature has yet to obey some of nature's laws. Why, we know not. He may not enter anywhere at first, unless there be some one of the household who bid him to come in. So bid means like to request, to ask, please come in. So you must invite him in. He cannot just enter your home. He must be invited first. Though afterwards he can come as he please. His power ceases, as does that of all evil things, at the coming of the day. Only at certain times can he have limited freedom, if he be not at the place whither he is bound. He can only change himself at noon, or exact sunrise or sunset. These things we are told, and in this record of ours we have proof by inference. Thus, whereas he can do as he will within his limit, when he have his earth home, his coffin home, his hell home, the place unhallowed, as we saw when he went to the grave of the suicide at Whitby. Pachu says bid invited. No, bid is not invited. To bid someone comes in means to request that they come in. Bid means to make an offer or a request. So they make an offer him to come in. So bid means like offer or request, something like that. Then there are things which so afflict him that he has no power. Oh wait, I think I missed something here. It is said too that he can only pass running water at the slack or the flood of the tide. Then there are things which so afflict him that he has no power. as the garlic that we know of, and as for things sacred, as this symbol, my crucifix, that was amongst us even now, when we resolve. To them he is nothing, but in their presence he take his place far off and silent with respect. There are others, too, which I shall tell you of, lest in our seeking we may need them. The branch of a wild rose on his coffin, keep him that he move not from it. A sacred bullet, fired into the coffin, kill him, so that he be true dead. And as for the stake through him, we know already of its peace, or the cut off head that giveth rest. We have seen it with our eyes. Thus, when we find the habitation of this man that was, we can confine him to his coffin and destroy him if we obey what we know. But he's clever. I've asked my friend Arminius of Budapest University to make his record, and from all the means that are, he tell me of what he has been. He must indeed have been the Voivode Dracula, who won his name against the Turk over the great river on the very frontier of Turkey land. I think that's where you are, Sirkon, Turkey land. If it be so, then was he no common man, for in that time, and for centuries after, he was spoken of as the cleverest and most cunning, as well as the bravest of the sons of the land beyond the forest. Pachu wrote Budapest University. You know, they write Budapest like two words, but maybe that's how it was written before. But Budapest, one word, is just the capital of Hungary. That mighty brain and that iron resolution went with him as to his grave. Went with him to his grave. And there are even now arrayed against us. The Draculas were, says Arminius, a great and noble race, though now and again were scions. I'm not sure if you're supposed to say, I think I would pronounce it scions, but let's see. Scion is a young shoot or twig or a plant, especially one used for grafting or planting. But in a figurative meaning, it means a descendant of a notable family or lineage, used to describe heirs of important members. So people from important families, when you're talking about their ancestors. And it's pronounced scion. Sirkon says Ottomans called him Kazikli Voivoda Vlad the Impaler. That's right. That's the name in English. Vlad the Impaler. So is Voivoda, is that Vlad in Turkish? Arrayed scions. So scions are descendants of noble or very wealthy, powerful families. Let's see. They learned his secrets. Wait, I think I meant the Draculas were, says Arminius, a great and noble race, though now and again were scions who were held by their kovals to have had dealings with the evil ones. I don't know what a koval is. Let's see. In Turkey land. That's so weird to to put the word land. I don't know why I think that's so funny, but it's so weird to put the word land after that. Wait, I just want to look up this word Koval. How do you spell it? Koval. Koval is a noun and an adjective that says something or someone of the same age, time period, or duration. A person or thing of the same age or period. The poet and the philosopher were Kovals, living during the Renaissance. I guess maybe maybe that would be similar to peer. Yeah, peer or contemporary. A lot of weird words in this paragraph. Pancho is writing down Kovals. Don't use that word. Nobody will ever understand what you're talking about if you use it. But it means contemporary or peer. Though now and again were scions who were held by their Kovals. So they became the descendants of Vlad the Impaler, Dracula, were sometimes known by the people who lived with them at the time as to have had dealings with the evil one. So, I don't know, are they talking about Dracula or are they talking about the devil? I'm not sure. They learned his secrets in the, oh, here we go again, Scholomance. Okay, we have to look up that word, Scholomance. A lot of vocabulary for me in this paragraph. Scholomance originates and refers to the mythical school of black magic. Well, so we've seen necromancy, and that means like trying to predict the future by talking to the dead. And the word skull obviously means school. So scholomance means like a school, apparently, a school for learning how to predict the future or divining. Yet, Pachu, you're writing these words down, but you could never really use these these words in contemporary English. Nobody will know what you're talking about. So forget about Kovals and Turkey Land and Scholomance. Focus your energy on other words. More important. They learned his secrets in the Scholomance, amongst the mountains over Lake Hermannstadt, where the devil claims the 10th scholar as his due. In the records are such words as Stregoica, witch, Ordog, and Poko. I think these are either Slavic words or they're Hungarian words. I don't think that we need to try to define them unless you really want to know what they mean. But I guess Stregoica must mean witch. Ordog and Poko, I don't know. Satan in hell. Satan is another name for the devil and hell. And in one manuscript, this very Dracula is spoken of as Wampir, which we all understand too well. There have been from the loins of this very one great men, and good women in their graves make sacred the earth, where alone this foulness can dwell. For it is not the least of its terrors that this evil thing is rooted deep in all good. In soil barren of holy memories, it cannot rest. And now we must settle what we do. We have here much data, and we must proceed to lay out our campaign. We know from the inquiry of Jonathan that from the castle to Whitby came 50 boxes of earth, all of which were delivered at Carfax, We also know that at least some of these boxes have been removed. It seems to me that our first step should be to ascertain whether all the rest remained in the house beyond the wall. To ascertain means to get information, to find out. So the first thing that we have to do is find out if all of the rest remain in the house beyond that wall where we look today, or whether any more have been removed. If the latter, we must trace. So now their plan is to go to that house where they know that Dracula is staying and count all of the boxes of earth, of ground, and make sure that there are 50. Because if there aren't 50, they have to trace. They have to figure out where the other boxes went. Here, we were interrupted in a very startling way. Outside the house came the sound of a pistol shot. The glass of the window was shattered with a bullet, which ricocheting from the top of the embrasure struck the far wall of the room. Ricochet is what happens. Like, imagine this is a bullet from a gun. So pew, and then the bullet hits something. A ricochet is when it hits something and then it moves and goes in another direction. That's a very, very precise word describing the bullet hits something and then it bounces and then it moves in the other direction to hit something else. Now, what is an embrasure? I have no idea. Let's see. Architectural opening or indentation in a wall, especially one designed to allow a weapon like a cannon or a gun. Okay. So let's take a look. Let's look at a picture of one. I can picture it in my mind, but I'm not sure if you could based on that description. So let's take a minute to look at what that means. Well, I guess they use it for teeth also, because you get mostly pictures of teeth. But this is what it was describing. If you go to a fortress or a fort, there will be little holes where you could put out a gun or something else. You're protected, but you can shoot at people, and that's an embrasure. But also, I guess it must be the space between teeth. So there are two ways that you could use that. I hate looking at people's mouths. I've got to get back to the book. I could never be a dentist. How can you look inside people's mouths all day? That's gross. Here we were interrupted in a very startling way. The outside of the house came the sound of a pistol shot. The glass of the window was shattered with a bullet, which, ricocheting from the top of the embrasure, struck the far wall of the room. So it ricocheted and it went to the other side of the room and hit the other side of the room. I'm afraid I am at heart a coward, for I shrieked out. Shriek is, ah! The men all jumped to their feet. Lord Godalming flew over to the window and threw up the sash. As he said, so we heard Mr. Morris's voice without. Sorry, I fear I've alarmed you. I shall come in and tell you about it. A minute later, that's the American. So even when he's in England, he's got a gun. A minute later, he came in and said, It was an idiotic thing of me to do, and I ask your pardon, Mrs. Harker, most sincerely. I fear I must have frightened you terribly. But the fact is that whilst the professor was talking, there came a big bat and sat on the window-sill. I've got such a horror of that damned brutes for recent events that I cannot stand them, and I went out to have a shot. as I've been doing of late of evenings, whenever I've seen one. You used to laugh at me for it, then, Art." "Did you hit it?" asked Dr. Van Helsing. "I don't know. I fancy not. For it flew, that I fancy not means I don't think so. For it flew away into the wood." Without saying any more, he took his seat, and the professor began to resume his statement. Sircon says that's an Americanism, having a gun. I suppose so. "We must trace each of these boxes, and when we are ready, we must either capture or kill this monster in his lair." A lair, that's a place where, like a vicious animal lives. That's not a very good definition. Let me just get a better definition for you. Lair is a place where something lives, and it sounds dangerous. That's all I know. But let's see what ChatGPT says. A lair is a noun that has two primary meanings: a place where wild animals live, such as a den, a cave, or a hideout; a hidden or secluded retreat or dwelling, often with a connotation of secrecy or solitude. So it doesn't have to be bad, but it sounds pretty scary or dangerous. A lair. It sounds like something scary lives there. We must trace each of these boxes, and when we're ready, we must either capture or kill this monster in his lair, the place where he lives, the secret place where he lives. Or we must, so to speak, sterilize the earth, so that no more can he seek safety in it. Sterilize means to make clean. But I guess that the way that they would make the earth clean would be to, I don't know, say prayers or do some kind of ritual to make it so that evil things can't go there. Thus, in the end, we may find him in his form of man between the hours of noon and sunset, and so engage with him when he is at his most weak. And now for you, Madam Mina, this night is the end until all be well. You're too precious to us to have such risk. When we part tonight, you no more must question. We shall tell you all in good time. We are men, and are able to bear, but you must be our star and our hope, and we shall act all the more free that you are not in the danger, so as we are. All the men, even Jonathan, seemed relieved, but it did not seem to me good that they should brave danger and perhaps lessen their safety, strength being the best safety, through care of me. But their minds were made up, and though it was a bitter pill for me to swallow, I could say nothing, save to accept their chivalrous care of me. Mr. Morris resumed his discussion. As there's no time to lose, I vote we have to look at his house right now. Time is everything with him, and swift action on our part may save another victim. I own that my heart began to fail me when the time for action came so close. But I did not say anything, for I had a greater fear that if I appeared as a drag or a hindrance to their work. A drag means something that makes something go slower, like a weight. So she was saying if I talked about my fear, I may be a drag, which means I may be like a weight making them move slower. Or a hindrance. A hindrance is something like an obstacle. So she tried to act brave even though she was very scared, because she was worried if she talked about how scared she was, it would make the men hesitate. and then they wouldn't be able to accomplish their goal quickly. Maybe she wanted to say, "Oh, please be careful. Please don't go yet. You're going to die." And she didn't, that's what she was thinking, but she didn't want to say it because maybe it would either be an obstacle or make them move more slowly or not as well. They might even leave me out of their counsels altogether. They have now gone off to Carfax, which means to get into the house. Manlike, they have told me to go to bed and sleep, as if a woman can sleep when those she loves are in danger. I shall lie down and pretend to sleep, lest Jonathan have added anxiety about me when he returns. I just want to check how many pages we have. I think maybe just a couple more. Dr. Seward's Diary, 1st of October, 4 a.m. Just as we were about to leave the house, an urgent message was brought to me from Renfield to know if I would see him at once, as he had something of the utmost importance to say to me. I told the messenger to say that I would attend to his wishes in the morning. I was busy just at the moment. The attendant added, "He seems very importunate, sir." Importunate. Let's check the meaning of that word. Again, this is not a word that you would use in contemporary English, so don't waste too much energy thinking about it. Importunate is an adjective that describes someone who is persistent to the point of annoyance or inconvenience. Well, earlier we were talking about the word nagging. Remember, nagging is when you constantly bother someone to get something. And I think that would be kind of a modern synonym for importunate. Nagging. He was nagging me. I must see him, I must see him, I must see him. That's nagging. I've never seen him so eager. I don't know, but what, if you don't see him soon, he will have one of his violent fits. I knew the man would not have said this without some cause, so I said, "All right, I'll go now." And I asked the others to wait a few minutes for me, as I had to go and see my patient. "Take me with you, friend John," said the professor. "His case in your diary interests me much, and it had bearing, too, now and again on our case. I should like to see him, and especial when his mind is disturbed." "May I come also?" asked Lord Godalming. "Me too," said Quincy Morris. Everybody wants to go see him. "May I come?" said Harker. I nodded. That means I agreed. I moved my head for yes, and we all went down the passage together. We found him in a state of considerable excitement, but far more rational in his speech and manner than I'd ever seen him. This was an unusual understanding of himself, which was unlike any I had ever met with in a lunatic. And he took it for granted that his reasons would prevail with others entirely sane. We all five went into the room, but none of the others at first said anything. His request was that I would at once release him from the asylum and send him home. This he backed up with arguments regarding his complete recovery and adduced his own existing sanity. "I appeal to your friends," he said. "They will perhaps not mind sitting in judgment on my case. By the way, you have not introduced me." I was so much astonished, that means surprised, at the oddness of introducing a madman in an asylum did not strike me at the moment. And besides, there was a certain dignity in the man's manner, so much of the habit of equality, that I at once made the introduction. Lord Godalming, Professor Van Helsing, Mr. Quincy, Morris of Texas, Mr. Jonathan Harker, Mr. Renfield. He shook hands with each of them, saying in turn, Lord Godalming, I had the honor of seconding your father at the Wyndham. I grieve to know, by your holding the title, that he is no more. He was a man loved and honored by all who knew him, and in his youth was, I have heard, the inventor of a burnt rum punch, much patronized on Derby night. Mr. Morris, you should be proud of your great state. Its reception into the Union was a precedent. He knows all this really obscure information. That's a little bit weird, especially, I mean, maybe he possibly met this man's father once, but now he kind of knows the history of the state of Texas. It's a little bit weird. Makes you think that there's something more happening here. Its reception into the Union was a precedent which may have far-reaching effects hereafter, when the pole and the tropics may hold alliance to the stars and stripes. The power of treaty may yet prove a vast engine of enlargement, when the Monroe Doctrine takes its true place as a political fable. So he's even referring to the policies of certain presidents. He shouldn't know this information. This is very weird for him to know this. What shall any man say of his pleasure at meeting Van Helsing? Sir, I make no apology for dropping all forms of conventional prefix. When an individual has revolutionized therapeutics by his discovery of the continuous evolution of brain matter. And he's speaking like a university professor. So, just think that a few hours ago he was eating spiders. Spiders. And now he's talking like a very sane university professor, highly educated, using fancy language and phrases, and showing his knowledge about everything. It doesn't make any sense. When an individual has revolutionized therapeutics by his discovery of the continuous evolution of brain matter, conventional forms are unfitting, since they would seem to limit him to one of a class. You, gentlemen, who by nationality, by hereditary, or by the possession of natural gifts are fitted to hold your respective places in the moving world. So the language of this man is very complicated right now. But remember, he's the spider eater. Bugs, spiders. And now he speaks like the smartest man in the world. I take to witness that I am as sane as at least the majority of men who are in full possession of their liberties, and I'm sure that you, Dr. Seward, humanitarian and medico-jurist, as well as scientist, will deem it a moral duty to deal with me as one to be considered as under exceptional circumstances. He made this last appeal with a courtly air of conviction which was not without its own charm. I think we were all staggered. Staggered is when you move like this. So if something surprises you very much, maybe you would say, "What?" like that. We were all staggered. For my own part, I was under the conviction, despite my knowledge of the man's character and history, that his reason had been restored. I felt under a strong impulse to tell him that I was satisfied as to his sanity, and would see about the necessary formalities for his release in the morning. I thought it better to wait, however, before making so grave a statement, for of old I knew the sudden changes to which this particular patient was liable. So I contented myself with making a general statement that he appeared to be improving very rapidly, that I would have a longer chat with him in the morning, and would then see what I could do in the direction of meeting his wishes. This did not at all satisfy him, for he said quickly, "But I fear, Dr. Seward, that you hardly apprehend my wish. I desire to go at once, here, now, this very hour, this very moment, if I may. Time presses, and in our implied agreement with the old Scytheman, let's see, Scytheman, is that like an old way of saying Scotsman? I don't know, let's see. Scytheman. So a scythe, though, that's like what the grim. Let's see. Shut up and just ask ChatGPT instead of trying to guess. A scythe. Well, scythe. Yeah, scythe. Okay, yeah. All right. A scythe is a tool. Scythe. There's another word for this person who he's talking about. There's an image which maybe you're familiar with, maybe not. We'll see in a minute. This is the person who represents death. So when you die, this is called the Grim Reaper. Reaping is when you harvest something. So he has this tool, that's the scythe. And when it's time to take the wheat, you cut the wheat. That's reaping. So reaping is when you harvest something. And the grim means like scary or serious or death, something like that. And so the Grim Reaper, this is the person who comes and takes you when you die. He's come to harvest you. It's kind of scary, right? But most people know him as the Grim Reaper. Renfield is referring to him as the Scythe Man, which I don't think that normal people would ever know what that means. Time presses, so that means time is going very quickly. And in our implied agreement with the old Scythe Man, it is one of essence of the contract. It is of the essence of the contract. So I think he's saying in a very weird, fancy way that he doesn't have much time left. He's going to die pretty soon, as we all are. I'm sure it's only necessary to put before so admirable a practitioner as Dr. Seward, so simple yet so momentous a wish, to ensure its fulfillment. He looked at me keenly, and seeing the negative in my face, turned to the others and scrutinized them closely. When you scrutinize something, you look at it very, very closely. You check it very closely. Not meeting any sufficient response, he went on. Is it possible that I have erred in my supposition? You have, I said frankly, but at the same time as I felt brutally. There was a considerable pause, and then he said slowly, Then I suppose I must only shift my ground of request. Let me ask for this concession. Boon. A boon is like a gift. Privilege. What you will. I am content to implore in such a case. So he says, I'm happy to implore. That means beg. I'm happy to beg. Not on personal grounds, but for the sake of others. I am not at liberty to give you the whole of my reasons, but you may, I assure you, take it from me that they are good ones, sound and unselfish, and spring from the highest duty. Could you look, sir, into my heart, you would approve to the full the sentiments which animate me. Nay, more, you would count me amongst the best and truest of your friends. Again, he looked at all of us keenly. So keenly means like very carefully. And I had a growing conviction that his sudden change of his entire intellectual method was but yet another phase of his madness, and so determined to let him go on a little longer, knowing from experience that he would, like all lunatics, give himself away at the end. Van Helsing was gazing at him with a look of utmost intensity, his bushy eyebrows almost meeting with the fixed concentrations of his look. He said to Renfield, in a tone which did not surprise me at the time, but only when I thought of it afterwards, for it was one addressing an equal, "Can you not tell, frankly, your real reason for wishing to be free tonight? I will undertake that if you will satisfy even me, a stranger, without prejudice, and with the habit of keeping an open mind, Dr. Seward will give you, at his own risk and on his own responsibility, the privilege you seek." So Professor Van Helsing is saying, well, I'm a stranger. Tell me the real reason why you want to leave. I'm sure if it's a good reason, the doctor will let you go. He shook his head. So when you nod your head, that means you're agreeing and you're saying yes. But when you shake your head, you're saying no. Oh, no. He shook his head sadly, and with a look of poignant regret on his face. The professor went on. "Come, sir, bethink yourself. You claim the privilege of reason in the highest degree. Since you seek to impress us with your complete reasonableness, you do this, whose sanity we have reason to doubt, since you are not yet released from medical treatment for this very defect. If you will not help us in our effort to choose the wisest course, how can we perform the duty which you yourself put upon us? Be wise and help us, and if we can, we shall aid you to achieve your wish." He still shook his head, and he said, "Dr. Van Helsing, I have nothing to say. Your argument is complete, and if I were free to speak, I should not hesitate a moment. But I am not my own master in the matter. I can only ask you to trust me. If I'm refused, the responsibility does not rest with me." So he's kind of threatening people. He's kind of saying, well, I'm not allowed to tell you. I can't tell you. But you have to trust me. It's a really good idea to let me leave. And if you don't let me leave, I'm not responsible for what happens to you. I thought it was now time to end the scene, which was becoming too comically grave. So I went towards the door, simply saying, "Come, my friends, we have work to do. Good night." As, however, I got near the door, a new change came over the patient. He moved towards me so quickly that for a moment I feared that he was about to make another homicidal attack. So remember, when you say homo, that means man, and side, that means murder. So homicide means killing a man, murdering a man. So the doctor was afraid that Renfield would attack him again and try to kill him. My fears, however, were groundless, for he held up his two hands imploringly. Remember, implore means begging. He held up his hands imploringly and made his petition in a moving manner, as he saw that the very excess of his emotion was militating against him, by restoring us more to our old relations. He became still more demonstrative. I glanced at Van Helsing and saw my conviction reflected in his eyes, so I became a little more fixed in my manner, if not more stern. Stern means like firm or strong or serious, and motioned to him that his efforts were unavailing. So he went, unavailing, that means it's no use, it's not working. So his efforts were not working. I had previously seen something of the same constantly growing excitement in him when he had to make some request of which, at the time, he had thought much, such, for instance, as when he wanted a cat, and I was prepared to see the collapse into the same sullen acquiescence on this occasion. Sullen means like sad, and acquiescence means like giving up. So, oh, doctor, can I have a cat? No. See, I'm giving up and I look sad. So he was thinking that, he was hoping that Renfield would do the same thing now. My expectation was not realized, for when he found that his appeal was not to be successful, he got into quite a frantic condition. He threw himself on his knees and held up his hands, wringing them. This is wringing his hands. In a plaintive supplication like begging, and poured forth a torrent. A torrent is like a stream and of entreaty. That's also begging. So many words for begging, I never realized. Let me entreat you, Dr. Seward. Let me beg you. Oh, let me implore you. Again, let me beg you. And let me out of this house at once. Send me away. How will you and where you how you will and where you will. Send keepers with me, with whips and chains. Let them take me in a strait waistcoat, manacled and leg ironed. So manacles, that would be, like chains for your arms, and leg irons, those would be for your legs. And a straight jacket or a straight waistcoat, that's like, what they do to crazy people so they can't move their arms. Even to go, but let me out of this. You don't know what you do by keeping me here. I'm speaking from the depths of my very soul, of my heart. You don't know whom you wrong, or how, and I may not tell. Woe is me. That's an expression. Woe means like sadness. And woe is me, that means, oh, I feel so sad. Woe is me, I may not tell. By all you hold sacred, by all you hold dear, by your love that is lost, by your hope that lives, for the sake of the Almighty. Mighty means strong. Almighty means the strongest. But the Almighty, if you put the in front of Almighty, that's another way of saying God. So this is like, for God's sake, for the sake of the Almighty. Take me out of this and save my soul from guilt. Can't you hear me, man? Can't you understand? Will you never learn? Don't you know that I am sane and earnest now? That I am no lunatic in a mad fit, but a sane man fighting for his soul. Oh, hear me, hear me. Let me go, let me go, let me go. I thought that the longer this went on, the wilder he would get, and so would bring on a fit. So I took him by the hand and raised him up. Come, I said sternly, no more of this. We've had quite enough already. Get to your bed and try to behave more discreetly. Discreet means like without being noticed, without people noticing you, without getting attention. He suddenly stopped and looked at me intently for several moments, and then, without a word, he rose and, moving over, sat down on the side of the bed. The collapse had come, as on former occasions, just as I had expected. When I was leaving the room, last of our party, he said to me in a quiet, well-bred voice, "You will, I trust, Dr. Seward, do me the justice to bear in mind later on that I did what I could to convince you tonight." Oh, what's going to happen? Okay, that was the end of chapter 18. So we have, I've seen Pachu and Muhammad are both here today. Do you want to practice? Let me know in the chat if you would like to practice. So if they say yes, I will bring them in through Discord, and then we will practice some of the vocabulary words that we talked about tonight. But the focus will be on pronunciation, intonation, and accentuation. And we'll do that for about an hour. So if you want to improve your accent, this is a great way to do it. And if you ever want to practice with me, then I think you should join my Discord server. There's a link in the description. And because I'm trying to maybe start something where I get a lot of people and we do like 10 or 15 minutes each. We kind of rotate. But first, I need a large group of people for that. And I don't have that right now. So join. Okay, Pachu and Mohammed say yes, we want to practice. So I'm going to take a little break, a 1-minute break. And that I'll arrange the vocabulary words and get something to drink. And then we'll start. So don't go away. Sirkan says, "Thank you for reading." Oh well, thank you for watching. Come back. Don't go away. Press the like button. Share it with your friends. Okay. Let me see. I've got to switch to. Oh no. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right. So I will be back in 1 minute. Okay, I am back, and let me see. Already got everything up here ready for us. Now I have to. I forgot to fix my hair. Let me find the music and turn that off. All right, so now we're going to join Pachu and Mohammed on Discord, and we will practice for about an hour. Hello. Pachu, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good. Okay. Good morning.
Good. Good morning, sir.
How are you doing today?
Sir, I'm doing great.
Great. All right. Great. All right. Mohammed
Great.
said that he was also going to join us. Maybe he's a little bit late. Okay. All right. Well, let's start. What is, Pachu, I hear like a little echo. Here's Mohammed. Mohammed, are you there?
Yes,
How are you doing today?
I'm fine.
That's good. All right. Well, Pachu, are you still there? The echo is gone. I think maybe you eliminated it. Or did you just?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, Pachu, what is the first word on our list? Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
It's peculiar.
Okay. Mohammed, can you say that word? How do you pronounce that word?
Peculiar.
Okay. All right. So, Pachu, I'm just going to say that word. What is the second vowel sound? Peculiar. Peculiar. Q.
Peculiar.
E-E-U. Q. Q. You start with a smile and you finish with a kiss. Q. Q.
You. Peculiar.
That's
Peculiar.
yeah, that's better. Peculiar. Peculiar. Peculiar.
Peculiar.
Have you seen that?
Peculiar.
Do you know that word, Pachu?
Yes, sir. Yes.
What does that mean?
It's a strange.
Strange. Not strange, strange. Just like great. It's that same sound. Strange. Great.
Strange. Strange.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen that word before also, Mohammed?
Yes.
Okay. So you're both familiar with it. Mohammed, can you read the first 4 words of that sentence?
The house had a.
The house had a. The house had a. What are the sound? Where's the big word in there? Where's the sound with the big word?
House.
Can you say that phrase again?
The house had a.
The house had a. So you've got small, big, small. The house had a. Say it again.
The house had a.
Can you say that, Pachu?
The house had a.
The house had a. The house had a. What are the next 2 words, Pachu?
Is a peculiar
And the next word?
smell.
How will you say those 2 words together?
Is a peculiar smell.
Okay. Which word do you think is bigger in that phrase? Peculiar or smell?
Is a peculiar.
Why do you think that should be bigger?
Because it is an adjective.
Yeah, so you make it
And
you pronounce it in a you pronounce it in a bigger way because it's an adjective. That's right.
yes,
And which syllable do you think we should pronounce in a big way?
peculiar.
Q.
Pe-
Q. Q.
pecu-
Q.
Peculiar. Yeah.
Peculiar smell. Peculiar smell.
Peculiar smell.
The house had a
Peculiar.
peculiar smell.
The house had a peculiar smell.
Mohammed, can you say that?
The house had a peculiar smell.
Peculiar, peculiar house, house, q. The house had a peculiar smell.
The house had a peculiar smell.
Yeah, we're just building our big, small, big, small, big, small rhythm. What are the next two words, Mohammed?
That I,
Okay. Do you think that those should be pronounced in a big way or a little way?
little way.
Okay. So we can add that. We can make smell, that, and I like one word. Smell that I. Smell that I.
Smell that I.
Smell that I.
Smell that I.
It's like one word. The house had a peculiar smell that I.
The house had a peculiar smell that I.
Okay. Pachu, can you say that? The house had a peculiar smell that I.
The house had a peculiar smell that I
Okay. And what are the final two words, Pachu?
couldn't identify.
Which word do you think is more important? Couldn't or identify?
Identify.
Uh, I don't know. I think I would like to. Let's see. The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify. It could be either one,
No.
but for some reason I like couldn't more.
Oh,
I
yes.
know. I know that I tell you it's usually the final word, but that's why I say usually because sometimes it isn't.
Yes.
I don't know. Just to me, like when I hear it in my head, I like emphasizing that there's no rule to this. Okay, so it's
Yes.
really you can be creative, but I just think it sounds better if you say couldn't big.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll emphasize the could part.
And also think that it has negative. Yeah. So we should stress on it.
The stress on what? On the could you mean, or on the nt?
Yeah. And
Like couldn't. Do you know? It's funny. I was reading in a book that normally you do not. You normally wouldn't. It doesn't make sense, but you normally would not stress the negative part. Isn't that weird? I can't tell you why,
yes.
but
Yes.
but I was reading
Weird.
because it makes sense that you would do that, but normally we don't. I'm not sure why that isn't. That is like the house isn't big. You barely hear the int part. The house isn't big. It's just a little n sound, right? That's very normal.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Maybe we could, let's see, I couldn't identify. No, I wouldn't, I wouldn't even emphasize anything in identify. It sounds a little bit too it sounds fake. So it's couldn't I
Okay.
couldn't identify. Couldn't identify.
I I couldn't identify. I couldn't identify.
The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
Peculiar or peculiar? Which one is better?
Peculiar.
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 Peculiar. Okay. The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify. Try.
The house had a the house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
Okay. Mohammed, can you say the entire phrase?
The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
Okay. The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify. Say it again.
The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
Okay. How many phrases do you think we could separate this sentence into, Mohammed?
Two phrases.
How many?
Two phrases.
Okay. Which is the first phrase?
It will end at a smell.
It ends at smell. So let's separate that. Okay. Now, in the first phrase, the house had a peculiar smell. What do you think is the most important word?
Peculiar.
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 That's a hard word to say. Do you want this phrase to sound serious or happy and friendly?
Happy and friendly.
Happy and friendly. Okay. So that means we should use a high tone. We should say peculiar. We should put a high tone in there, but it's the end of a phrase, so we also have to make it low because it's the final part of a phrase. So we'll say peculiar smell.
Peculiar smell.
Peculiar smell.
Peculiar smell.
How should the phrase start? Should it start with a high tone or a low tone?
High.
High. Okay. The house had a peculiar smell.
The house had a peculiar smell.
Panchu, can you say that phrase?
The house had a peculiar smell.
Okay. What about the final phrase, Pachu? How would you like that to sound? Do you want to sound serious or light?
Serious.
You want to sound serious? Okay. So instead of going high, we'll go low. But how should we start our phrase? Should the phrase start high or low?
The high.
Okay. That I couldn't identify. That I couldn't identify.
That I couldn't identify.
Mm-hmm. The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
Mohammed, can you say the entire phrase?
The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
Okay. Mohammed, can you make a what kind of smell house have question?
What is the smell that the house have?
What kind of? What kind of? What kind of?
What kind of smell that the house have?
Okay. Are we talking about the past or the present?
Yes, that the house had.
Okay. So
Had.
how will you make the question in the past?
What kind of smell that the house had?
How do you if you have okay, here's a sentence. The house had a. Okay, that's our phrase. The house had a. How will you make a yes no question? A basic question with the house had a.
Did the house have a?
That's right. That's your question form. Now you can say what kind of smell.
What kind of smell does the house?
No, we're talking about the past. What? Remember that. Go ahead.
What kind of smell? What kind of smell that the house have? Did the house have?
Did the did the did the
Did the house have?
did the house did the house did the house.
Did the house
What kind of smell
have?
did the house have? Again?
What kind of smell did the house have?
The or the? The house or the?
The house.
Okay. What kind of smell did the house have? Again?
What kind of smell did the house have?
Okay. What is in that question, what kind of smell? What do you think is the most important word in that phrase? What kind of smell?
What?
Well, if you have like a single word question, what time is it? Or when are we leaving? Then maybe you would focus on that WH word. But this is a phrase. This is what kind of. And so what is the most important word in that phrase? What kind of?
Kind.
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 So suddenly, when you have a phrase, the rules change, and then you have to say kind. What kind of? What kind of smell?
What kind of smell did the house have?
One more time.
What kind of smell did the house have?
Pachu, can you make that question?
What kind of a smell did the house have?
What kind of smell did the house have? Okay. And what is the answer, Pachu?
The house had a peculiar smell
Okay. That I couldn't identify.
that I couldn't identify.
Mohammed, what kind of smell did the house have?
Peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
Yeah, tell me the whole sentence. Tell me the complete sentence.
The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
The house or the house?
The house.
The house. Okay. That I couldn't or that I couldn't?
Sorry?
That I couldn't or that I couldn't?
That I couldn't.
Right, right. So tell me again. The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
The house had a peculiar smell that I couldn't identify.
Okay. Pachu, can you see the sentence that I have up on the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Now, have you ever seen this word before? Asinine.
Mm,
Hello?
yes, sir.
Do you know that word? Have you ever seen that word before?
No.
No? Okay. Well, you have to be careful because it's a very, very strong word. It's not a bad word. It's not a word that you're not allowed to say, but it's very strong. It means extremely stupid. So it's a very insulting word to be used. Okay, but it just
Yes.
means very, very stupid. It's a strong, strong word for stupid. Okay? Asinine.
Yeah.
Can you read the sentence, Pachu? What is the sentence?
She regretted her asinine decision to skip study for the test.
Do you understand the sentence? Does that make sense?
Mm, so she regretted because she skipped the study for the test.
And that was a very, very stupid decision. Really stupid.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Does it
Yes.
make sense?
Yes. Got it. Yes.
Mohammed, have you seen that word before? Asinine.
This word, no.
Okay. Just remember to be careful because it's a very strong word. So only use it when
Okay.
something is extremely stupid, okay?
Okay.
Mohammed, can you say the first three words of that phrase?
She regretted her asinine
Just the
decision.
just the first three words. Just the first three
She,
words.
she regretted her. She
Okay.
regretted her.
Okay. That's right. Her will sound like She regretted her. She regretted her. What's the biggest sound in that phrase? She regretted her.
Break.
Let's see. It's not she regretted her, it's she regretted her. Which sound is big?
Regretted.
Gre, gre, gre,
Right.
gre. So that's the accented syllable of gret, regret, regret. So it's not regret, it's regret, regret.
Regret.
Mm-hmm. So this phrase sounds like this: regretted. She regretted her. She regretted her.
She regretted her.
Mm-hmm. Say it one more time.
She regretted her.
Mm-hmm. Pachu, can you say that phrase?
She regretted her.
Regretted her. Make that a big sound. That gre in the middle is very big. She regretted her.
She regretted her.
Okay. What are the next two words, Pachu?
Asinine decision.
Every time you say that word, I have to laugh because it's kind of rude. You have to be careful about that word. Okay. So I got distracted. I already gave you the answer for asinine. The first sound is very big.
Okay.
Asinine, asinine.
Asinine.
She,
Asinine.
she regretted her asinine.
She regretted her asinine.
Okay. What about decision? Is there a big sound in there?
Yes.
Where is it? Decision,
Decision. Season.
decision,
Se-
decision,
decision. Season.
decision,
Yes, siege.
decision, decision. Okay. So we'll make that big. So we're building our big, small, big, small, big, small rhythm. She regretted her asinine decision.
She regretted her asinine decision.
Okay. Mohammed, can you read that whole phrase? She regretted her asinine decision.
She regretted their asinine decision.
Okay. What are the next three words?
Is asinine a rude word?
It's rude because it's very strong. Okay, it's not a bad word. It's not an offensive word. It's just offensive because it's very strong. It means extremely, extremely stupid.
There is another word like Jack. First word is Jack. Is it the same category?
You mean like jerk?
No, Jack.
How do you spell that?
Jack as.
Can you write it in Discord? I'm not sure which word you're saying. Oh, jackass. Okay. 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 The word ass, ASS. Hope I don't get in trouble with YouTube. That means like a donkey. Do you know what a donkey is?
Yes.
Okay. So really, the meaning of ass is just a donkey, which is famous for being a stupid animal. So
Okay.
the word jackass is offensive because you're calling someone. It's like calling someone an. It's like calling someone an idiot.
But why it's Jack?
I don't know why. Well, let's see. Let's ask ChatGPT. That's a good question. But now you have to remember that when you have two words that are together, you always. This is why I couldn't understand you. Is the first word has to be bigger than the second word, so you have to say jackass.
Okay.
Let's see. Originally, let's see. Jackass originally a generic name for a male animal, like John Doe. Okay. It's just a word that means like a male donkey. That word jack is just a word that you put in front of ass to mean it's a male donkey and not a female donkey. That's all it means. Okay, so it doesn't have any
Okay.
special meaning. Okay.
Okay.
But jackass, that's not nice. Well, also asinine isn't, but it's not a bad word. It's not like an offensive word. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's offensive because of the meaning, but it's not like saying "oh f" or "oh sh." Like it's not like saying "oh fudge" or "oh shoot." It's not those words. Okay. Do you understand?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So it's bad, but it's just because the meaning it means extremely stupid.
Okay.
All right. So she regretted her asinine decision to skip studying. Uh, can you say those three words to skip studying?
Skip studying.
Which word do you think is in that phrase, which word would you make big?
Studying.
To skip studying. You know, I think it's skip. I think I would emphasize the word skip here. I think that's an important word. To skip studying. Skip studying. Skip studying. Study. You know, it's funny because we could make this kind of big in study. Let's do both. Let's say skip studying. Can you try
Skip
that?
studying.
Skip studying.
Skip studying.
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying.
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying.
Pachu, can you say that whole phrase?
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying for the test.
Okay. Now, in that final phrase, for the test, what is the big word?
Is a test.
Okay, so you say for the test. For the test. For the test.
For the test.
Mhm.
For the test.
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying for the test.
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying for the test.
Okay. Now, Pachu, how many phrases do you think you could divide that sentence into?
So she regretted her asinine decision.
Okay.
Yeah. And then to skip studying
Okay.
for the test.
All right.
Yes.
Now, in the first phrase, she regretted her asinine decision. What is the most important word?
Is a asinine decision.
Okay. Let's say let's. Which one should we focus on, asinine or decision? Which do you prefer?
Asinine.
Okay, because it's an adjective, right?
Yes.
The thing is, it's such a strong word that it sounds extra bad if you emphasize that. She regretted her asinine decision. But okay, we can go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, she regretted her asinine decision.
And how do you want to sound? Do you want to sound happy or serious when you say this?
Not serious.
Okay, so you want to sound light or friendly?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll say this in a high way, but because we have the end of the phrase here, we're also going to have to go low by the time we get to decision, right?
Yes.
So, asinine decision.
Asinine decision.
Asinine decision.
Asinine decision.
How should our phrase start? Should it start high or low?
Is a high.
High, because phrases normally start high. So, she regretted her asinine decision.
She regretted her asinine decision.
Mohammed, can you say that phrase?
She regretted her asinine decision.
Okay, now if we take a look at the next phrase, what is the most important word? Do you think skip or studying is more important?
Skip.
Skip, okay. And how do you want to sound? Do you want to sound serious or light and friendly?
Friendly.
Friendly? Okay.
Yes.
So we'll try to keep the high tone as much as possible. It's a pretty short phrase. So maybe we can keep all of this high, but we should end low because most phrases end low. So to skip studying, to skip studying.
To skip studying.
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying.
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying.
Pachu, can you Can you read the whole thing?
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying.
To skip studying. Okay. She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying.
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying.
Okay. And for the final phrase, Pachu, how do you want to sound? Do you want to sound light or serious?
The test, so it is serious.
Serious? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, but we have to start high because it's the beginning of a phrase. So we'll make that high. But then when we get to test, we'll make that low.
Yes.
All right. For the test. For the test.
For the test. For the test. For
She,
the
re-
test.
she regretted her asinine decision to skip studying for the test.
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying for the test. For the test.
Muhammad, can you read the entire phrase?
She regretted her asinine decision to skip studying for the test.
Mm-hmm. Muhammad, can you make a why she skipped study for test question?
Why did she regret her
Let's
asinine
no, let's just do
decision?
why she skipped test. Why she skipped test.
Why did she skip the test?
Okay, again.
Why did she skip the test?
Now, in that phrase, in that question, what is the most important word?
Skip.
How about why? Because it's a question.
Why?
Why? Yeah, because you're making a question, and you want to know the reason, right? So you focus on the word why. Why? Why?
Why did? Why?
hmm How does why plus did plus she? How does that sound?
What did she?
Okay, but why is a very important word. Do you agree?
Yes.
So we have to say it in a big way. Why did she?
Why did she?
Why did she? Why did she?
Why did she?
And then skip, that's another important word. Why did she skip?
Why did she skip?
Why did she skip the test?
Why did she skip the test?
Mm-hmm. Pachu, can you make that question? Why did she skip the test?
Why did she skip the test?
Okay. And let's see. The answer is because she makes asinine decisions. Because she always makes asinine decisions.
Because she always made asinine decision.
So she skipped the test because she always makes asinine decisions. Can you say everything together?
She skipped the test because she made asinine decision.
She always makes asinine decisions.
Because she always made asinine decisions.
Okay, don't forget to whistle when you say she. She.
She.
She skipped the test because she always makes asinine decisions.
She skipped the test because she always made asinine decision.
Mohammed, why did she skip the test?
She skipped the test because she made an asinine decision.
She always makes asinine decisions. Try again.
Because she did an asinine
She always
decision.
makes she always makes
She always makes She always makes
Asinine decision.
an asinine decision.
Okay. Well, we're not saying an asinine decision, not one. It's her habit. Those are the only kind of decisions she makes. So it's plural. She always makes asinine decisions.
She always makes asinine decisions.
Okay. Pachu, what is the final word for today?
Is a trivial.
Trivial. Do you know that word? Have you seen that before?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Means not important.
Okay. Have you seen that word before, Mohammed? Trivial?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Pachu, can you read the first three words of that phrase, of that sentence?
Okay, sir. We shouldn't argue.
Okay. If you were just going to make one of those words big, which word would it be?
Is argue.
Okay. Now I'm going to say that word, and I want you to. There are two syllables in that word. Which syllable has the big sound? Argue. Argue.
Argue.
Argue. Which syllable has the big sound? Argue.
Are.
That's right. Can you say the word like that? Argue.
Argue.
Okay.
Argue.
So that's our big word. We have three words together: we shouldn't and argue. So we shouldn't, that would sound very small. We shouldn't argue.
We s- we s- we shouldn't argue.
We shouldn't argue.
We shouldn't argue.
Okay. Mohammed, can you say that phrase? We shouldn't argue.
We shouldn't argue
Okay. What about the next three words, Mohammed? How would you read those?
about something too.
Okay. And actually, maybe we'll just do the next two words about something. About something.
Ab-
Uh,
About something.
about something. Any big sounds in there?
About
Do you think there's anything we should emphasize
about about
about? There are some times when you would emphasize a preposition, but I think most of the time you probably won't. Those are usually words that get lost in, unless they're very special words, they usually get lost in the phrase. So something is probably in a pretty neutral sentence without a very special meaning. Probably the word you would want to focus on is something.
okay.
Which syllable in the word something, or which word would get the emphasis? Some or thing?
Something.
Something.
Some.
That's right. Some. When you have two words together, it's almost always going to be the first word that will get the emphasis. We shouldn't argue about something. We shouldn't argue about
We
something.
shouldn't
Something.
we shouldn't argue about something.
Something. Okay, we shouldn't argue about something.
We
Pach,
shouldn't argue
go ahead.
okay.
Sorry.
We shouldn't argue about something.
Mm-hmm. We shouldn't argue about something.
We
Something.
shouldn't argue about something.
Mm-hmm. Pachu, can you say that phrase?
We s- we shouldn't argue about something.
Okay. And how about the next two words, Pachu? What are those two words?
So trivial.
Okay. Can you say that again?
So trivial.
Which word do you think we should emphasize in that phrase?
So
So, okay. So is it so trivial or is it so trivial?
So trivial.
Yeah, it's really big. So trivial. So trivial.
So trivial. So trivial.
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
Mohammed, can you say that whole sentence?
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
Okay. Mohammed, how many phrases do you think we could divide this sentence into?
I think one phrase.
Just one phrase?
Yes.
Okay. I think we could do two. I think we could separate it at about. Okay. I mean, you could make it one phrase if you want. There are no rules about this, but I think it would be good to make it two, like that, just to give us something to work with. Okay. Now, in the first phrase, we shouldn't argue. What is the most important word, Mohammed?
Argue.
Argue. Okay. How do you want this phrase to sound? Do you want to sound serious or light and friendly?
Serious.
Serious? Okay. So we'll make this completely flat. We'll make this low. Argue. But we do have to start high because you normally will start a phrase high. We shouldn't argue. We shouldn't argue.
We shouldn't argue.
hmm We shouldn't argue.
We shouldn't argue.
Pachu, can you say that? We shouldn't argue.
We shouldn't argue.
Okay.
We shouldn't argue.
What about the next phrase, Pachu, about something so trivial? What which how do you want that to sound? Do you want that to sound serious or light and friendly and nice?
Make serious.
Serious? Okay.
Yes.
So in the final part of the phrase it will sound like so trivial. So trivial. So trivial.
So trivial.
But how should you start the
So
phrase?
trivial.
How will you start it?
Is a high tone.
Okay. About something so trivial.
About something so trivial.
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
Okay, Pachu, is it argue or is it argue?
Is argue. I have
Uh,
to do it in opposite direction.
but if you wanted to sound positive, if you want to sound positive, it would be the opposite. It would be argue, not argue,
Yes.
but the opposite.
Yes.
Argue. You can do that if you want. Argue. We shouldn't argue. You can do that.
We shouldn't. Yeah. We shouldn't argue.
No, you see, you're doing it. You're still going argue, but it's
Okay.
the opposite.
Sorry.
It's argue. Fall down, not.
We shouldn't. Okay. So we shouldn't argue.
You're still doing it. You say
So
argue.
we shouldn't argue.
Argue. Argue.
Argue.
Ar.
Argue.
We shouldn't.
Argue.
We shouldn't argue.
We shouldn't argue.
That's better. To say the whole sentence.
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
Is it so trivial or so trivial?
So trivial.
That sounds better. It sounds more natural if you do it like that. So trivial.
So trivial.
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
We shouldn't argue
Ar-
about something.
Not argue, argue.
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 hmm
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
That's better. That's much better. Mohammed, can you say the entire phrase?
We shouldn't argue about something so trivial.
hmm Mohammed, can you make a what we argue about question? Do that in the present progressive. What we argue about. Do that in the present progressive.
What we are arguing about.
Okay, present progressive. We are arguing. How do you make a question? A yes no question with we are arguing. How do you make a yes no question?
What are we arguing
Yeah, you
about?
have to use the question form. What are we arguing about? Try again.
What are we arguing about?
Now in that phrase, in that question, what is the most important word?
What?
What? Okay. How do you think it would sound if you combine what plus are plus we?
What are we?
What are we? What are we?
What are we? What are we?
What are we? And then we have arguing about. What are we arguing about?
What are we arguing about?
Mm-hmm. Pachu, can you make that question? What are we arguing about? Pachu,
What are you arguing about?
again, tell me again. What are we arguing about?
What are you arguing about?
We're saying we. What are we arguing about? What are we arguing about?
What are we arguing about?
What is the most important word in that question, Pachu?
So what
Oh, your sound is breaking up for some reason. What are we? What? What is the most important word? What are we? What are we arguing about?
what
What are we?
what are we?
What are
What are
we
we?
arguing about?
What are we arguing about?
hmm Can you make that question again, Mohammed? What are we arguing about?
What are we arguing about?
Let's say the answer is we're arguing about something trivial.
We are arguing
Mhm.
about something trivial.
We are arguing about something trivial.
We are arguing about something trivial.
Pachi, what are we arguing about?
We are arguing about something trivial.
Okay, all right. Well, I think that we have to stop here for today. And
Thank you, sir.
I think I'll be back in about 9 hours to do another one. So if you want to come back and practice again, that would be what, like 6 a.m. Mexico City time. Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
thank you
Okay.
everyone for participating and making comments and asking questions. And hope you come back the next time. Okay. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Bye bye.